It starts in a quiet English village where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. An old cottage, winter air, creaking floors, and the kind of silence that makes you hear your own breathing. The village is Dodleston, near Chester, close enough to the Welsh border that the landscape feels like a threshold. Fields, hedgerows, and lanes that go dark early. Inside Meadow Cottage, a young couple try to live normally while the house feels slightly wrong. Not haunted in a Hollywood way, just uneasy, like the rooms are listening. Then a borrowed school computer arrives. A BBC Micro, pre-internet, a beige box with a keyboard and a screen that glows like a tiny window. It is meant for ordinary work, writing, saving files, the kind of simple routine that makes a home feel modern. One day, a new file appears that none of them remember creating. It is not labeled clearly. It is just there, waiting like a note slid under a locked door. They open it and find words that feel like they are aimed at them. Not a random glitch, not junk characters, a message with intent. At first, the writing looks wrong, like someone speaking English through thick cloth, strange spelling, odd rhythm, but it is readable, and that is the problem. The message implies the writer can see them. It questions who they are and why they are in the house. It questions who they are and why they are in the house. It also reads like an accusation, as if the cottage belongs to the writer and the people living there are intruders. The file ends with initials, LW. They do what anyone would do. They test it. They type back. They ask who LW is, where they are, and how this is happening. When the next reply arrives, it claims a year that should make the whole thing impossible. It suggests the writer is in the 1500s. If you are trying to stay rational, this is where you laugh and call it a prank. But the atmosphere in the cottage has already shifted. Things are being noticed, small disturbances. Reports around the story describe odd physical signs like unusual footprints in dust and objects arranged in deliberate stacks. Whether those details are paranormal or human, they add pressure. The messages keep coming. The writer starts to form a personality. Suspicious, sharp, sometimes frightened. The writer explains the house in terms that sound older. He describes light as if it is a thing a devil would make, because electric light has no frame in his world. The couple and their friend begin to feel like they are in a dialogue with a mind that does not belong in their time. The initials LW become a name, Lucas Wainman, in some retellings, and the messages push harder on one theme. This is my house. Why are you here? They ask questions that should expose a hoax. Local history, names, institutions, things you cannot easily fake in a hurry. The messages respond with details that seem to land in the right region and era. That does not prove time travel. It proves the story has research in it, one way or another. A key part of this case is that it is anchored to a real place and real history. Chester, Tudor, England. A period full of fear, religion, accusation. In some accounts, the writer claims he studied at Oxford. Later analysis of the story highlights how text becomes the battlefield. What was typed, what was printed, what was lost, what was translated into modern spelling. That instability is not just a footnote. It is the core of why the Dodleston messages remain unresolved as a mystery. The evidence is mostly words. The writer also sets traps, the way a frightened person would. He tests whether the people typing back are truly from the future, or demons, or liars. The more they respond, the more personal it becomes. The messages start referencing things in the room, objects, photos left on the table. That detail is one of the most unsettling claims. If true, it suggests a viewpoint into the cottage. If false, it suggests someone physically present or socially close. The timeline in retellings runs through 1984 into 1985 and beyond, with bursts of activity and then uneasy, quiet, then the story widens. Another voice appears in the messages, not from the 1500s, but from somewhere else entirely, a presence linked to the year 109. This is where the case turns from eerie to almost science fiction. a Tudor voice, a modern household, and a third player that feels clinical, cold, and controlling. The 2109 element is often framed as interference, as if someone is editing the conversation, changing words, steering outcomes. In response, the household tries to shift mediums. They move from screen messages to handwritten marks and paper left out overnight. Some photo archives associated with the story show handwritten messages attributed to the Tudor communicator. Again, that does not prove the claim, but it shows how the story presents itself. Within the narrative, Lucas is not safe. He fears arrest. He fears accusations tied to witchcraft or devilry, because his era punishes the unexplained brutally. Names enter the story that appear historical, including local officials and figures connected to Tudor Chester. These names become part of the verification attempt. One retelling describes a local sheriff figure communicating through the system, as if authority itself is leaning into the lightbox to demand answers. The emotional tension spikes because the household believes their replies might affect a real person in another time. Whether that is true or not, the psychological weight is real. The messages also carry grief. At one point, the Tudor voice speaks of loss in plague years, of a household emptied. It reads like a man trying not to break. This is the hinge of the whole case. It is not just spooky typing. It is a relationship built in words, across an impossible distance. Skeptics will say the obvious: a hoax is possible. Someone could have created files locally. Someone could have known enough history to mimic language. Believers will say the other obvious thing: the archaic tone, the specific local texture, and the evolving responses feel too alive to be a simple prank. A historian who reviewed the story has pointed out how the case is also about unstable texts and layers of narration, where certainty becomes slippery. That slipperiness is why the Dodleston messages endure. They sit in a gap between folklore and evidence, not provable, not dismissible in one sentence. In the story, the Tudor communicator eventually reveals a different name, Thomas Harden, or Harden in some tellings, as if the first identity was a mask. The household tries to find traces of that name in the historical record, searching for a paper trail that could anchor a ghost to a page. Some retellings claim they did find references. Again, that is not courtroom proof, but it is part of the case texture. Then the tone changes. The 2109 presence grows hostile in the narrative, as if discovery itself is not allowed, like the experiment is being disrupted. Whether you believe it or not, that plot point has power because it matches a real fear, the fear that knowledge has consequences and that curiosity invites attention. Eventually, the communications fade. The house stops typing back. The silence returns. But it is not the same silence as before. It is aftermath. The lingering mystery becomes two questions, not one. Who authored the messages, and why did the story form the way it did, with history, tech, and emotion braided together? If it was a hoax, it was unusually committed, unusually literate, and emotionally precise. If it was something stranger, it suggests consciousness can travel in ways we do not understand. The story was published and retold widely, anchored to Dodleston, the BBC Micro, and the claimed Tudor correspondent. If a house could speak, would it sound like a ghost, a prank, or a human voice trapped in the wrong century?